Good morning and happy Sunday. Thank you for supporting the rest of your pastor. I did a lot of sleeping and I didn't worship anywhere. I was curious what people did, and it turns out they're at the farmer's market and all kinds of other things, but not the same as worship. So it's good to be back here, and big things happened while I was away. Fifth fundamental force was discovered. Did anyone read that in the universe? I'm like, wow. And also the Friday men's group has something like an Excel spreadsheet. I've never seen that level of organization. So I'm like, big things happened. So it's wonderful to be back with you today. And I invite you now to take some deeper breaths, to let yourself arrive a little bit more fully, tuning into the gift of being here together like this. And hear this prayer from Psalm 19. God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, our rock and our redeemer. Amen. On the other side of fear, that's where I always wanted to be when I was coming of age and coming into the world and wondering where I fit and what my life could be. I had so many ideas and big dreams, but I was afraid. Like really afraid of disappointing my parents, afraid of going to hell, afraid of going into the big bad world and getting it wrong, afraid of using up my one chance to come home. That's what I was told when I left for college. You can come home for real, for the fully, just once. I didn't want to use it up. And here's the other thing. At some point, I also became really afraid, maybe even more afraid of what would happen if I stayed there and never went out to sea. Never tried any of those things on my life's to-do list. I spent a week in the place of my childhood, so I've been pondering these things and many other things. It feels like one of those places that is at the same time both familiar and foreign. Do you have any places like that in your life? I know the language and symbols and what is expected and clear, but it's not quite comfortable. I have learned and am learning the delicate art of holding and keeping relationship with people who see the world entirely differently than I do. Do you know what that's like? Maybe some of you do. That's especially tricky with family, right? The place where I grew up in rural Eastern Washington is precious to me and to many. I loved being raised among the trees and feeling like the outdoor was our playground, dirt roads and dusty trails, rope swings and trees, walks to the lake. And I love that still, and it's noticeable to me now, that a big part of the culture is still quite literally guided by church people, like my mom. People who do things like still attend funerals. People don't do that so much anymore, right? She still visits shut-ins and makes pies for the widows, and that's part of what people do there for each other. I give thanks for the best of what it was to me as a kid, but what really stuck out at me this time is how so much of the culture there and even the faith life, the spiritual journey, the Christian path is about what and whom to fear. What is present and active and alive and well is the idea that yes, there is a God, but this God is the best one, and also this God is a presence to fear. Have any of you been introduced to that God before? The confusing part is that God is still love, but be afraid. A little bit of a confusing message there, but it's everywhere. billboards, bumper stickers, church signs, messages of all kind, sharing a word, something like that, letting the world that know that their God sides with some and not others. And so much of it is driven by fear. And as I say, maybe even in the American life, so much of our conversation, our political conversation, what and whom to fear. And I think I know why. Fear gets a quicker response. It fuels us. And I guess there's less of a bodily message. You are stardust, a sacred expression that will never happen again. And the universe already loves you and claims you. Love each other. Maybe that doesn't make you angry. That doesn't incite a response. The message that there is something to fear literally starts a cycle in us. Science tells us that fear puts our bodies in a particular mode because it's in our mind, and then it gets to our other organs and it starts to activate, communicating to our nervous system, which responds by releasing stress hormones. Our blood flow literally changes and moves away from the heart when we are driven by fear. And I don't know about you, but when I think about all the things that I've done when I'm driven by fear, it's like say things you can't take back, make a short-sighted decision, go to war. I bet you have a list of things that you could create of what happens when we're driven by fear, when we're making decisions from that place. Now, understandably, we develop these responses in order to survive things like tigers and terrible storms, and that makes sense, but I wonder in this time if being rooted in fear isn't generative for us. It's not leading to thriving, it's leading to a loss of hope and to despair. And I'm also seeing that it leads to silos, disengagement, more sadness, and then anger to mask all the pain. And then sometimes the coping mechanisms make it all worse. Fear quite literally distances us from our hearts and can sink us. And I think that is part of what this ancient teaching has to say to us today. Being guided by fear will stop us, restrain us, try to contain us, or keep us stuck. When we are beckoned beyond our safe place, when we are called out to what is sure to discomfort, it isn't not knowing how that will bring us down. It isn't doing it wrong. It's not having enough money that will sink us. It is fear. Because as the story goes, the teacher had left them to have some time alone, which I love that they make a point of telling us that. He goes off away from the crowd, and then the disciples go on ahead of him in the boat, and then a big storm comes, and he arrives to them, and their first response is to freak out. They think he's a ghost. And then he tells them not to be afraid, maybe one of the most repeated texts in all of the Bible, fear not, or do not be afraid, something like that. But still they aren't sure, and so they make him try to prove it, and then he actually goes out of the boat and starts to walk on water. He actually is walking on water, but then what happens when he becomes frightened? Whoop, he starts to go down. And I don't know about you, but I know something about that. Not the walking on water part, but I know what it's like to feel like you're sinking because of fear. I know what it's like to not have faith in the right things and to start to drop. I know what it's like to need to let go in order to rise. It's fear that will sink us. Are you with me? Where are you sinking because of fear? That's what I've been pondering. And how can we help each other walk around the walls of fear that we have built? I love how vacation gives clarity to some things, the gift of new eyes from a rested mind. And as I was coming back and pondering all this, I kind of had this funny thought that many of my worst fears have already happened. Here's a non-exhaustive list. Being alive for beautiful places burning. Moving to Colorado and being impacted by a mass gun violence event. Being here for things so hard in the ocean that the whales are gathering together for a ritual before they stop trying to live. A global pandemic that takes millions of lives and changes some things forever. Feeling helpless with so much technology, but still wars that seem never ending, and sometimes feeling like we are literally an inch away from nuclear disaster. Over my career, watching 40 million Americans stop going to church. Literally, these are a list of some of my worst fears. But you know what? I can cross those off. And the other thing I've realized is that when I'm worrying, I'm not here. I miss all the beautiful faces that are here right now, the beautiful bird songs, the glorious trees, the flatirons. What if part of the reason fear sinks us is because it's either in the past or in the future, not right here in the present? What if it's not God, not universe, not spirit we are to fear, but actually fear itself? Fearing what we humans do when we are driven by fear. That's the thing to fear. That's something to be afraid of. Scared humans, right? What if the Spirit lures us to the other side of fear in part because we absolutely don't need fear? We don't need it anymore. What if there is something liberating in that place? When we are no longer afraid, when we are freed to act, to do one thing, not seeing despair as an option. I love that quote from David Suzuki: despair is a luxury we can't afford any longer. We have no choice but to try. It's being guided by fear that will stop us, restrain us, try to contain us, or keep us stuck in the status quo of sadness and the past. It's not knowing how that will bring us down, or the fear of doing it wrong that will throw us off. It's fear that will sink us. Beloved of God, what do we have to lose? And what is fear stopping you from doing that God is calling you beyond? What is possible on the other side of fear, beyond sinking fear? God is with us on the water. May it be so. Amen.
Greetings to you wherever you are watching this. For those of you whom I have yet to meet in person, I'm Reverend Nicola Marsh, pastor here at Community UCC. And we see that people like you are watching our live stream each week. And because of this, we are excited to be embarking upon an experiment. And we need you. If you are engaging with us regularly, finding meaning in what we are about, we would like to extend a special invitation for you to be among the first CUCC digital disciples. For signing up for just $10 a month, you will receive a t-shirt with the new CUCC logo. And we are also exploring the idea of offering other content to those of you who are part of this new and growing area of digital ministry. Sign up to support us in this new way at cuccboulder.org/support by clicking on the yellow donate tab and noting you are a digital disciple in the instructions. Or as always, we welcome an old-fashioned check mailed to us at CUCC, P.O. Box 3646, Boulder, Colorado 80307. Thank you for being and building beloved community with us, and thank you for your gift, whatever it might be.